All right, welcome to another episode of Badass Clinician. Guys, today we have a very special guest, like a good friend of mine, known him for years, Anthony Falco. He is the vice president of the APTA in New Jersey. So, Anthony, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Natty. Happy to be here.
So, we arranged this for so long.
Yeah. It took us a little while to get our schedule synced up, but I'm happy we're here. Yeah.
Well, listen, guys, here's the reason why we have dry needling, and that's why the state of New Jersey is far superior in the state of New York, because we still have BFR, not like those folks over there. So I'm just going to toot your horn for you. So before we get started, Can we just hear a little bit about your background, how long you've been in the field, and how you end up where you are right now?
Yeah, sure. So first thing I want to say is, as far as dry needling goes in New Jersey, just to clarify one thing you said there is, I was a very small part of a huge team of people, and I was definitely not at the front of it, right? So there was a ton of people involved with the effort to get dry needling passed, which dates back years, over 5 years of working on this thing to get it passed. So there's a ton of people at APTA&J, our staff members. Dan Klim, our executive director, Debbie, who works in the office at APTA&J, certainly help run the day-to-day operations, and were instrumental in getting this thing across the finish line. So I know we're probably going to talk more about some APTA and APTA New Jersey stuff as we go along, but it's important to know that there's a whole team and there's a whole group of volunteers that are in elected positions like myself, but also people that care about the profession, really cared about the issue of dry needling, that got that across the finish line. So that we could talk more about that later. But yeah, so I'll give you my quick PT background story. I graduated from PT school 2013 from Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. Pretty quickly after I graduated, I knew that I wanted to go through some residency training. So I did that through a company called Evidence in Motion, and passed my OCS exam, and I did a bunch of hours with Jim Phillips, who was a mentor for me going through the residency process. And that's actually where, Natty, you and I met.
Yep.
And from there, I went on, practiced for a few years in a pretty traditional big box outpatient PT clinic. And I just knew that wasn't the fit for me long term. So I ended up leaving that company and took a job with a smaller private practice, 2 locations. And I had the opportunity to spend some time in a Division I training room, providing physical therapy care to athletes a couple days a week. So it was nice because I had variety in regards to my patient population, high-level athletes, and then a more traditional outpatient practice the other 3 days of the week. So I was there for about 5 years, and I thought that was a company I was going to be with for a long period of time. But COVID happened, life happens. I have a son now, and I had the opportunity to take a job a little bit closer to home. And so now I'm back in a bigger kind of corporate setting, but in a great position where I have the opportunity to treat like 2 patients an hour, really dictate my own schedule, and really happy kind of where I am now as far as my job situation goes. As far as career development, after I finished my residency, passed the OCS, a couple years went by and I had that itch again. So I've been pursuing my fellowship in manual therapy through Belling College, which is associated with the Evidence in Motion program. Mm-hmm. And I'm about like 99% of the way done with that program. And that has been really instrumental in me kind of leveling up my clinical skills, but also just my critical thinking, my critical awareness, not only in the clinic and treating patients, but just in life in general. Going through a program like that has really impacted my ability to think and my ability to be self-aware of my own bias and my own blind spots. And that's been, it's been an awesome journey, and I'm so close to finishing it. And I'm excited to kind of get it off my plate in one sense, but also to start to really fully use all the tools that I've had there, not just so focused on patient care, but being able to apply it to practice, to advocacy, to business, to leadership. And that's kind of where I'm at this point.
So I mean, great intro, man. I think just to kind of backtrack,
Sure.
I love what you say about the APTA. Obviously, give credit to all these other people. Yeah. And clearly, if you guys know, I'm not as involved in the APTA. I pay my dues. I pay my membership.
We need you.
Yeah. And again, this is why Andy and I are having this conversation, because there's so many people like me, right? We're busy day to day.
Of course.
You asked me to show up is it still Thursday on like 8 p.m.
Yeah. We have, we've transitioned in COVID, so we got a lot of webinars going on right now, providing a lot of continuing education to people around the state and even outside the state. But yeah, it's hard, man. There's like time, treasures, and talents. Like, which can you give us right now? And for people like you who are running a business, running a podcast, and doing, great things for the profession in your day-to-day operations of your business, like, yeah, right now you probably don't have time to give your talent directly to APTA and J. But if you can be a dues-paying member and stay aware, stay up to date with what's going on a professional association level, even if that doesn't necessarily change what you're doing on a daily basis, I think it makes you a more aware and more informed clinician and business person operating in the physical therapy space. And then it gives you the relationships like you and I have where, there's been times where things have popped up and you shoot me a message or I shoot you an update about what's going on. And I think that's important, that the people who are providing their time and their talents, in addition to their treasure to the APTA New Jersey, my job is to communicate with people like you and clinicians like you who are out there running their businesses to make sure that we all know that this bigger ship in terms of our profession is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? I mean, obviously I can only make that excuse for so long. And you and I have been in a talk of like me getting involved a little bit more just because, I'm always like, so if you watch ESPN, I'm never a fan of Stephen A. because he's the guy that just talk, not in the arena, judging everything. So like for me, like I can't make that kind of judgment when I'm not involved, right? Sure. So for me to be involved, that's for me to have that kind of insight to see what's going on. And it's great to see what's coming down the pipeline because ultimately what drives us together is like we want to see the field better, right? That's why the podcast has started. That's why you're on here. Yeah. I love a couple things you said so far, as far as just like you pursuing, your fellowship and just to like pretty much correct your own biases because we all have it. And I think having the 201 patient an hour is a great way. But a good friend of mine, Tom Padilla, out in Arizona, he has 100% cash base, very successful. He wrote a post last night, super powerful. He was like, he used to think that having the one-on-one model is why people have good outcome. People have good outcome because that one-on-one allow you to connect with the patient, but also reflect on the case itself. Yes. I think, if I were to go back in time when I was working in big box operation, when I was seeing 3 to 4 patients an hour, the frustration was obviously I was time poor, but I was time poor because I was not able to reflect on the cases that I could have done better.
100%. That reflection time, and in my head, like, and I don't think I've ever actually heard it termed this way, but when I think about it or journal about it or I'm reflecting, it's digestion time. You need time to digest and reflect on what just happened and what can you do differently in the future. And one of the things that is ingrained from my fellowship program is very heavily based on like a Maitland model, for anybody who's familiar with Maitland. But this idea that after you see a patient and you write that evaluation, you always have a 3-way go. What am I going to do if they come back better? What am I going to do if they come back the same? What am I going to do if they come back worse? And the ability to have the time and the mental space and capacity to think about what you just did with that patient on the eval and know no matter what scenario they come back in for that second visit, having a game plan and being ready to go, it makes you so much more able to be flexible and think on your feet versus if you don't have the time to reflect and come up with that 3-way go or have that plan ready for in your head about what you're going to do with that patient on the next session, and you have 4 patients going and now this patient comes back, there's 3 other people coming in at the top of the next hour. It's impossible to be able to think well in a way that is going to be best for the patient if you don't have that time to reflect. And that's really, for me, going through residency, going through fellowship, the professional development and training I've done in that way has given me the ability to create that mental space and mental awareness to reflect and then learn. And when you can get that going, it's like a snowball because every patient you see teaches you something. And from every patient, you can learn something about that particular condition, that patient's, what they do for activities, whether it's a sport, an athlete, if it's a police officer, a fireman, somebody who works as a chef, whatever their role is in life, you learn a little bit more about that with every patient you see. And then the next time you see somebody in a similar situation, you can call back on everything that you've learned from the previous patients you've seen. And every single time you see a patient, it's an opportunity to get better. And it's an opportunity to learn from that patient. And when you can get that cycle going, I've seen it over the last couple of years going through this program and just working on these skills. It really makes you a much better learner, and it makes you a much better critical thinker, which makes you a better physical therapist and a better clinician.
Yeah, 100%. And just looking back at my experience with big companies, like the only reason my experience was still good, and I'm always thankful about those kind of experiences because it's made me a way better thinker. Just like what you said, like taking the time to think about, like, all right, well, best case scenario, what do I do? Worst case scenario, what do I do? Yeah. And if they are not responsive at all, like, what do I do? Yeah. Right? So just having that, like, because I never feel like I was not prepared. Were there something, like, I was probably 80% prepared. Like, because there's time we're like, oh, wow, things are really bad. Way worse than what I expected. All things are really good. Yeah. Maybe they're too good. Right? That's also another, a different case scenario. But I one of the reasons that I have you on here is that obviously you and I have two different trajectory when it comes to our career, right? Mm-hmm. I went and I started my own business. I have here, you pretty much stayed a course. You had an opportunity, but then you took a different path. But you're in a good situation where, you know, if I was in your situation 4 years ago, man, I wouldn't even do this. Yeah. And I'll say this right now, like, because if I get to see 2 an hour, you know, get to treat, get home, be with my family, why would I take on all this, right? So let's talk about how you created that path for yourself, because I don't believe that things happen for a reason and by accident. I think you did it on purpose. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so one detail maybe I left out when I gave my intro was at the same time when I left my first employer after I completed residency, passed the OCS exam, I also started a side hustle, gig. So I had a small cash setup at a local CrossFit gym, and I did that also for almost 5 years. And I loved that. It was fun. It was hard work. It forced me to learn a lot from the business side of things and just keeping the books of a business and how do I sell my product to the people who are coming to see me and the members of the gym and the community, and how do I network with other professionals in the area and help them understand what kind of service I provide. So I did that. I did that for almost 5 years, and it was a really good learning experience for me. And I did it completely by myself. Like, I didn't have any partners. I didn't have any other clinicians working with me. So I would do my 40 hours a week at my full-time gig, and then I'd probably spend anywhere from maybe like 5 to 8 hours a week at the gym. So I'd work out, I'd see a patient, I'd work out, I'd see another patient, I'd come in on Saturday mornings. So I hustled, I did that grind. And I did enjoy it, and it was fun. But it also taught me a lot about where my strengths and weaknesses are and where I wanted to go in the future. So I knew after about 2 or 3 years of doing that I didn't have that drive or desire to take it full time myself. And as life progresses, my wife and I, we have a 21-month-old at home now. And so we had a baby during COVID. And, you know, during that time, I wasn't seeing any patients with the side gig, and it really forced me to do some self-reflection and do some thinking and do some critical appraisal of kind of, well, where am I and where do I want to be, and how do I want to distribute my time during the week? And I knew that if I was putting in close to 50 hours of, you know, patient care time during the week, that didn't leave much time for me to be able to be there with my new baby and my family. So I made the tough decision that once things opened up after COVID and I decided to take this new position, that as I took the new position, I was going to shut down my side gig and my side hustle. And man, there was a lot that went on mentally and emotionally at that time. Like everything from thinking like, man, am I a failure? Did I not push this hard enough? Did I not have enough business skill to make this work? Am I like letting the profession down by having this great side gig and then kind of just letting it fizzle out? And I went through a lot of that kind of stuff, making those decisions, but I think it really helped me grow and helped me feel confident and comfortable with the position that I came into, that's much closer to home and has this opportunity where, you know, I'm not overworked and have lots of flexibility over my schedule with my current employer. And I guess the other way that I ended up or created this opportunity for myself was with relationships. So I stayed in touch with some old coworkers that I've had that I really valued the way that they approach patient care. I knew that they would never take a job or a position where they didn't feel like they could be the type of clinician they wanted to be. And so when I found out that some of my old coworkers worked at this new clinic, that made me feel really comfortable about going in and even just having the interview. If I didn't know people that worked there and I didn't know who they were as individuals and who they were as professionals, I don't think I would have even taken the interview where I am. But because I had those relationships and I've kept in touch with those people and being able to connect with them and talk with them and understand how they felt where they currently are, that's how I found this great opportunity that I'm in now. And have and kind of knew that it would be a good fit for me even before I went and took the interview. So I think that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it's
Cool.
it's great, man. I you know what? That's so true. Like you did have that site.
Yeah.
We talked about it.
Yep.
I mean, I completely forgot about that. And I gotta say, man, I think the best thing that you did was admit that, like, hey, this is not for me. And I tell people all the time, sometimes it's just not for you.
Yeah.
And you have to sacrifice so much upfront. And you know, when I first started, like I was really green in the game, and I really had no other opportunities, right? Nothing like this was created. I didn't know enough people. I moved from New York to New Jersey, so I know no one.
Yep.
So I was like, all right, well, I guess this is the only, I have the opportunity to kind of burn the boat, but I did it slowly by starting a side hustle like you, but I'm just like, all right, well, I can make this work. But then luckily for me, I had a really good background in fitness where I was doing personal training. I know how to build a book. I know how to do all these things. And I did it throughout PT school. So I guess those were my like trial and tribulation that helped me able to scale my practice. But then again, I think the failure would be to keep going and then sacrifice everything else. Because to me, where I am at in life, and I learned this when my dad passed in 2019, was family life is very important to me. And if you ask me before that, everything about my life was all about like how do I make more money. Ever since that incident, I could care less. Like I'll make less money as long as I can be home. I can be there for my wife. I can be there for my dog and whatever it is for my family. That's very important. And I totally see why you're doing it, man. Because like at the end of the day, like there's this analogy. I'm sure you heard of it. It's like you're juggling glass ball versus rubber ball, right? The rubber ball is the business. If you drop it, it'll bounce back. Yep. The glass ball is your health, your personal life, your relationship. If you drop that, there's really no bouncing back.
100%. And I think one of the things I reflect on with what you're saying there too is like there are different paths in this profession. You can choose to right out of school open your own business. You can choose to go work somewhere else and get mentored or get some mentoring if you have a good situation, and with the goal to eventually open your own business. You can work at a corporate location and work your way up the corporate ladder. There is no one right or wrong way, I think, to progress through this profession. But I think you always have to stay true to yourself, and you gotta have that integrity with your own who you are and what you identify with. I think as long as you're staying true to that, no matter what type of employment situation you find yourself in, as long as you're staying connected to your self-identity and have that integrity of self, I think that sets you up for success no matter which direction you go in this profession. And to me, I think that's what I struggled a little bit with when I left the small mom and pop employer, 2 small private locations. When I left my side gig, I felt like that was part of my identity. And a lot of the self-reflection I did when I left was about, no, that really isn't my self-identity. My identity is, I love my family. I want to spend time with my son. I want to be true to myself. Like that is very important to me, that integrity of self. And it felt like maybe I was like going against that integrity, but with that self-reflection and self-learning, I kind of realized like, no, me taking this position that I'm in now allows me to be more me, if that makes sense. I know maybe we're getting a little deep on the philosophical side, but
I love it.
To me, that's so important. And I think the reason I think it's important to talk about it or bring it up is professionally, we can find ourselves in a lot of situations, and we can blame management. We can blame, the direction that the profession is going with, private equity getting involved, something we've talked about in the past. We can blame a lot of other things, but I think when you turn that around and bring it back into yourself, as long as you're being true to yourself and you're delivering a quality product that you want to deliver, and you have a situation that allows you to do it that way, whether it's private pay, in-network, out-of-network, big corporate job, small private job, like as long as you're staying true to yourself, I think we can avoid a lot of the burnout and a lot of the overworked and frustration that comes with the profession. Because if you look like on Facebook or Instagram, you can find tons of stuff that says like, man, the PT profession's going downhill. It's so frustrating. So I actually deleted Instagram off my phone the last few months just because I was getting overwhelmed with it myself, and I said I got to get away from this for a little bit. And I think that creating that positive internal drive, I think can help drown out a lot of that external stuff. And of course, there's big issues. There's student debt. There's how much we get reimbursed, how much we get paid, and there's certainly are stressors and drivers there. But I think the more that you can identify with yourself, stay true to yourself, it can help you find that balance to continue to provide great care to every patient that you see and that really is what moves the profession forward, is that interaction patient to patient. And that's like the bedrock for everything else that we do and everything else that we grow, and all the podcasting, the book you've put out, all the great stuff that you got. It all started from treating patients and doing it the right way. So
yeah. I mean, treating patients is why we got into the field in the first place.
Yeah.
Let's just say majority of us, right? We want to help people, create some sort of impact. And, you know, I love this, and I learned this from an early age, that, you know, everything bad that happened to me is because of me. Everything good that's happened to me is because of God, right? Let's just put it that way. So that way you can kind of like, yo, you're in the driver's seat. You can actively make decision to make it good or bad. And, you know, like I have this framework where every morning I get up, I meditate, you know, I pray, all of this stuff. And then I say, all right, for this day to be successful, what does the end of my day needs to look like? And I just kind of go backwards, reverse engineer. Because then from there, I know by the time like 9 a.m. hit, like I'm already in control. Yeah. Like if there's traffic, why wouldn't there be traffic? It's New Jersey, right? Like when I used to show up and see like my schedule, like 3 an hour, like why wouldn't it be 3 an hour? Because I knew I was signing up on for this. Like this is nothing new.
Right.
And then all I have to look is like, all right, well, like if this is my circumstances, right? I have to see 3 patients an hour. How do I make that the best 3 patients an hour?
Absolutely.
How do I make that my day is a little bit easier, right? How do I make sure that when I come home, I don't spend 3 hours doing notes. I do an hour and a half, right? Can I do notes during lunch, right? Can I do all and I do all that. And obviously I did it for 18 months, just because at that point I was also getting burned out myself. And the fact that you take total accountability of your own life will give you a lot of power. And there's no, like, power is always within yourself. No one can take that unless you give it away. Right? No matter what's corporate takeover, reimbursement rate, all of that stuff. Yeah. Are those important? Yeah, they play a huge role, but at the end of the day, it's a smaller, it's a grain of, it's a speck of sand in an entire beach, to me. So, and we shift gear when it comes to, like, obviously taking control, understand your core value. How do you then, based on, right, new grads or who are still practicing, how do you vet out a company that fit your core value, right? Because right now, I think the way I've seen is this big corporation coming up everywhere. The biggest thing that they get people in is like, hey, sign-on bonus, we get this, we get that. And I want to say, you know, some of us get catfish a lot where they say, hey, you're going to see 2 an hour, and the next thing you know is like 3, right? How do you encourage people in our profession to, hey, here's the boundaries without, again, you know, doesn't look like being a team player?
Yeah, I think, you know, if I could go back when I was a new grad and the first job I took out of school, it wasn't a perfect situation by any means, in regards to kind of workload, caseload, and hours worked and how everything ran. But it was a good learning experience for me. But one of the things I reflect back on, you know, back to reflection, thinking about my experience there and when I talk to students or I talk to new grads who are interviewing and stuff like that, is make sure that you talk to the clinicians, right? So if you're getting interviewed by a manager or a regional director or something like that, make sure you go and actually talk to the people that are working in the clinic that you're trying to get hired in. Make sure you talk to that person who's going to be your immediate boss on the you know, when you go in day one, who's going to be overseeing you or on you for, you know, that you're responsible to report to. Like, make sure you talk to that person and get a sense for, well, how do they run their clinic? What kind of treatment style do they have? What do they expect to see when you're there in terms of productivity, and how do notes get done? When do notes need to be done by? All those kind of things. Like, go ask those questions and go spend some time in the clinic. I think, especially for new grads coming right out of school, if you're taking your first job, don't take a job without spending time in the clinic. And I think it's easy to say, like, go find the clinicians that are doing things the way you want to do them, and try to get jobs at those places or try to spend time in the clinic with those places, so that you can see, wow, this really feels like a good fit for me. This looks like the way that I want to practice, and this looks like the kind of setting I want to be in. I think if you're not in the trenches and in the clinic seeing that, I think it's really hard to know for sure if it's going to be a good fit for you. And that's something that I hope all new grads do, or hope all PTs do before they take on a new position. I know I did that before I took the current role I was in. Even though I talked about some of the relationships I had and knowing some of the clinicians that were there, I still went into the clinic and spent a couple hours to check it out and make sure, like, does this look like the kind of situation I want to be involved in? I think that is so key and so important because, yeah, companies can tell you all kinds of stuff, and, you know, tell you they're going to do this and they're going to do that. But if you're in the clinic and talk to the other therapists on staff, especially if there's more than one PT that's there, like talk to them, ask them the questions of what they like, what they don't like, so that you can get a sense for what's going well there and what's not going well, and to see if it's going to be a good fit for you. That's like a real practical piece of advice. I think the other thing, maybe even before that, is just really sit down and think about what you want. I think when I came out of school, I know the first job I took it because it was one of the first ones that was offered to me, and I wanted to I want to have a job. And I got the job even before I passed the board exam. But in hindsight, I think I should have been a little bit more picky. I should have asked more questions. I should have done some of these things I'm talking about. And, when you take that first job, it's such an important, it's going to mold you a lot in how your career develops from the very beginning. And sometimes that's in good ways. Sometimes that's in bad ways. Sometimes you get into a job or you get into a position and you're going to learn things that you want to continue to do. And you're going to look around and be like, wow, I definitely don't want to do things that way. But I think the as much of that you can flesh out beforehand, I think is super important. Yeah,
no, it makes sense. So you just kind of took me back. Before I took my first job, like I interviewed it. They wanted to put me in another location. I was like, no. Give me the location that's the busiest, has the most athletes. Yeah. And they're like, well, that's an extra 45-minute drive. I was like, yeah, put me there. Like, because I'm willing to do that, right? Because I knew the population I wanted to work with. And another thing I did was I did a working interview where I say, hey, do you mind if I just come in and just see how the clinic runs for like 2 days, right? If you do it for 1 day, you only get a glimpse. You got to go spend a whole day. What's that whole shift going to look like? And I think this unpopular opinion, but this is more old school. This is going to make us old. But sometimes you just have to show up and then just do the work for free just to see how it is. The first time I met you, I remember I went to Professor Jim, and I'm like, hey, can I just come hang out, help out your clinic, whatever you need me to do, because I want to learn from you. Yeah. So I showed up, I met you there, and look at the relationship that we have, right? Exactly. Because I volunteered, like at that time, I think I drove like close to 40 minutes to be there just to see how he treat. And then he's like, hey, go hang out with Anthony, watch how he treats. And then I remember the first thing he said, like, oh, yeah, look, this Anthony's going to do some strain, counter strain. I was like, oh, cool. Now I get to see it in action. I learned it in class. Yeah. But it's those 5 hours I spend that actually gave me a lot of insight of like, okay, here's how I want to treat. Here's how, like, really good manual therapists are treating. And here's what I want to emulate, right? Just absolutely. If you don't have nothing to give, especially money, like for mentorship, give your time. Because you have plenty when you're young.
Yeah, especially when you have that time available early in your career, or even that space between, like, you finish your program, you're waiting a couple months studying to take the boards. Like, that's a great time to get out, explore, see this stuff in action. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of same thing for me, right? I was in a good situation where I was able to put up the money to be able to do a residency, but all that time I spent with Jim, I'm not getting paid for any of that, right? It's the same kind of thing. I just did maybe in a little more structured way, and you did the awesome thing of like being proactive and going out and seeking out those experiences and seeking out that input from people who were doing things the way that you wanted to do it, or doing things in a way that you wanted to learn from. And I think that is such an important investment of time and effort and energy earlier in your career, is to really learn, like, because what if you went to see Jim and you're like, man, I don't really like the way that this is going, or I don't like the way that this treatment works, or this doesn't look like the type of physical therapy I want to do. Now, fortunately, working with Jim and his clinic that he has there is awesome, and it's a great hands-on clinic, and super focused on getting people active and back to what they need to do. But you could have learned the opposite too. You might have gone to a situation and realized, like, oh, maybe that's not exactly what I want to do, and that helps you get to where you need to be and where you want to be as a clinician faster, right? Because what we don't need, and I would say this from now being a little further in my career and being a mentor to younger clinicians and advising younger clinicians sometimes, is like, I don't need more of me. I need you to be you, and you need to let your strengths develop as a clinician. And I think sometimes early on, we can get into situations where you're like, oh, I want to be that person, or I want to be like that person. And you want to take the best that you can learn from them and then see how it works in your hands, see how it works for you, and then use that to develop yourself so you can be the best you can be, versus trying to just emulate somebody else. So I think there's like that fine line of like, go out, get those experiences, learn from other people, and help you develop you, versus just trying to be somebody else, because you might actually not want to do what they're doing or be what they're being. I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that's contributed to why people feel like they're on the verge of failure all the time when something doesn't go well, because they have this. Do you remember the old school Nike commercial, the Like Mike campaign, where everybody just want to be like Mike? Guys, It's been how many years? No one like Mike.
Right.
All right.
Exactly.
So I think that, but there's LeBron, there's Kobe, right?
Yeah.
I think you just have to find your own thing, because if you start trying to be like someone, you can only emulate success through characters and behaviors,
Right.
but you cannot replicate every single thing. And when you're trying to do that, you're gonna set yourself up for failure, because guess what? They have more time, they have more experience, they have more failure, they have more knowledge. For you to try to catch up to them, you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're gonna be disappointed 10 out of 10 times.
Right. And that is something for me that at times, and especially earlier in my career, where maybe I was feeling a little burned out or a little bit overworked, it came a lot from exactly what you just said, right? Of trying to look at what other clinicians, the outcomes they were getting, the types of treatments they were doing, the types of patients they were seeing, and getting really frustrated. Well, why can't I do it that way? Or why am I not getting this technique down? Or why am I not seeing the exercise progressions the way that somebody else sees them? And it was less about me not having the skills or the knowledge or to be able to do it, but it was me not doing the self-reflection and the thinking for myself. I wanted to try to get the answers from somebody else. And so I think that also contributes to that development of self-awareness and self-reflection, and be able to build those patterns of thinking and build that ability to be an independent clinician that is you, not you trying to be somebody else, like we're talking about. Yeah.
And like, just like through all my years of owning business and running business now, what I realize is like, and I preach to this to my team all the time, that it's not about doing the big thing, right? It's all about the little things.
Yeah.
And the little thing is what's gonna drive success. So like in my own personal story, you and I marry, obviously, and every time our wives get upset, it's not about the big thing. It's always about the little things.
Yep.
So like for clinicians that are coming out looking to obviously start their own practice or work for a company that fits their core value, like you don't have to go chase the big stuff, because and this is where big corporation in any news media or in marketing media, they like to show like you need this big thing, then your life would then drastically change this. But really what you really need is hold down the little stuff, do more of the little stuff, and then that's when you make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And most of the time when I have patients that stay with me forever and always come back, it's the little things that we do, the card that we give, the phone call that we're like, hey, how's your mom doing? Like all of that stuff. It's the little stuff that adds on that makes a huge difference in business, in professional development.
100%. Yeah, the little things are the big things. One saying that I have kept front of mind throughout my career is from Tim Flynn. He says, experts do the basics well. And I think that's true in all facets of life, right? It's not just a clinical thing where it's, experts prescribe exercise well, or experts have good hand placement for their manual techniques, but experts communicate well. Experts in business listen well. Experts as clinicians do those things, and it's the basics that will get you those better outcomes. It's not the fancy new Con Ed thing. It's not the fancy letters after the name that are going to make the difference. It's doing the little things exceptionally well that separate the best from the rest, and separate experts from novices and beginners. That's huge. And I think that's probably like another really important point for younger clinicians is like the basic skills you learn in Clin Skills 1, the basic skills you learn in your, patient interview class or subjective exam portion of whatever course or class you're in, and however your program sets it up, like doing those things exceptionally well, the basics, that is going to set you up for success well into the future. And the sooner you can recognize that and commit to that and drill that stuff and get the reps on that stuff to be able to build your skills. It's true clinically, it's true in business, it's true in relationships, it's true in life. I think it's one of the things that contributes to being like a lifelong learner and being able to find joy every day in this kind of a profession, because there's always something to learn, and you always can go back and continue to refine those basics, and you can always go back and continue to sharpen the saw and make sure that you're not slipping in any spot. But it's definitely what gets me excited, is that kind of stuff, like going back to the well and like making sure that things that I assume I'm doing well, every once in a while go back and check and like, oh wait, I can actually do this a little bit better, or I've learned a way to do this in a little more of an efficient way, or a way that's going to give me better information. And continually going through that process of self-learning and self-reflection and self-improvement in all aspects of life, I think is what being a life learner is all about, and contributes to making being in the clinic fun, and making it different every day.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. It's like, again, like we get so distracted because doing the basic stuff means boring stuff, and then people tend to like, oh, I'm better than that. But like you said, every great clinician I met, every great business person I met is they just do the basic stuff extremely well. And it's like going back, like if you learn how to drive, you gotta learn how to drive on a car that's manageable. You gotta drive that well. Like if your first car Ferrari, I will willing to bet you're gonna crash it.
Yep.
Because you're not ready to handle that kind of the pressure. Right. And to go back to like even chasing like the big credential, like if you're doing the credential to really to add on to your knowledge rather than to give yourself accolades, you know, like there's two different things where you and I have met people, you know, throughout our career where they like to throw their letters everywhere. And these are the people who pretty much alienate other people because the way they come off. But the people who you can't even tell that they have all those letters. Right. And those are the people who's down to earth. And you're like, oh my God, that guy's great.
Yep.
Right. And that's what patients look for. No one ever come in here and be like, I want that guy because of those letters. They're just like, no, I like how that guy see. I like how he make me feel. And I feel like he gets me.
100%.
All right, that's the person.
100%. Yeah, you can have all the letters in the world after your name, but if you can't communicate, you can't connect with people, you don't have the emotional intelligence or the awareness to listen, all those letters don't matter. You know, you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you can't apply it and use it and be able to figure out where to meet the person who's in front of you, where they're at, you know, all the certifications and fellowships and residencies and all that stuff kind of goes out the window. So it's really important to be a good communicator, you know, and I think that's what that comes down to is, you know, you can have all the knowledge and all the letters after your name, but if you can't connect with people and you can't meet them where they are and deliver that information in a way that's meaningful to that person across from you. And this is true business. This is true any life relationship. This is true with every patient that you see, with coworkers. It's really hard to be successful if you can't do that.
So let's switch gear a little bit.
For sure.
I want to talk more about, APTA.
Yes,
What's going on? What are they doing? How do I be more involved? How do other people be more involved to pretty much help steer the direction of Battlefield, right? We need a unified front. You and I talked about before how big corporations are coming in, like venture capitalists, kind of taking over Outfield in a way. And, you know, rather than crying about it on Facebook, how do we then get involved with the APTA to advocate for ourselves, our profession, and do the right thing for us and the patient?
Yeah, that's a big question, and we'll do our best to address a little bit. The biggest thing about APTA New Jersey, especially where I'm the vice president, and the way we operate in the state is, if you are a member of APTA New Jersey, you get an email blast a couple times a month. It's called the APTA NJ e-news. You've probably seen it in your email. If you haven't, search your email and find it. And there are always announcements in there about opportunities to hop on webinars that are at either free or significantly discounted rates for members. So we're providing a lot of education around the state. Our special interest groups for APTA New Jersey do a great job of providing a lot of the content. So there's a wide variety of types of content that's out there as far as continuing education type stuff. And we're going to continue to roll that out. That's been really successful for APTA New Jersey through COVID. And the team's done a great job of getting that up and running and have a consistent flow of content that we're distributing out. And all of those webinars and Con-Ed pieces are always very well attended. So that's at a basic level. One way to get involved is support our continuing ed efforts. It's great. You can hop on the webinar and get some of your Con-Ed and support APTA NJ at the same time. So that's one option. If also in that APTA e-news, APTA New Jersey e-news that gets blasted out, there's always opportunities for volunteering, if we need committee members, if we have a task force that we're setting up. So one of the things we talked about before was dry needling. When there are big issues such as dry needling, one of the things that we'll do as a council of directors with APTA New Jersey is we'll put together a task force where we'll put out a call for clinicians who either have some expertise in this area or are interested in helping out with a particular topic. And that task force will come together to work on whatever we need for that project, whether it's getting the background information, if it's doing the research, if it's putting together a program or a presentation. There's always opportunities that when task forces are banded together to get involved there. And that's a great way to get involved because there's kind of a definitive timeline that task force has would have like a deadline on it to produce, bring something back to the council directors that then either we distribute or utilize in our efforts to do something like get dry needling passed. So there's always opportunities to get involved there. And like I said, that's a great way because they generally tend to be shorter in time commitment, and there's a stop of when that task force would be disbanded and then move on. There's always opportunities to serve in elected positions and elected roles. So that obviously is going to come with a little bit more of a time commitment. A great place to get involved if you're interested in the legislative side and APTA on a national scale is to serve as a delegate for New Jersey. Those positions get elected every year on a rotating cycle. And to learn more about that kind of stuff, you can reach out to me, or I can put you in touch with the nominating committee, people who run our elections and help get people elected to these positions. That's a great place to get involved, especially if you're interested on APTA at a much broader scale on the national sense. And that is where I first got involved, actually, and was a great learning experience for me to kind of see how the sausage was made. So my interest in getting involved at that level was, everybody says like, oh, APTA, what do they do for me? And for me, I said, yeah, I'm not sure what they do either, but I think I want to go find out so I can have a better answer to this question. And that's kind of led me to be involved and be where I'm at today as a VP. And then, ask questions too is the other thing. So when there are professional issues that pop up, you always can shoot an email over to our executive director or anyone on the council of directors. And it's something that, we'll bring back and discuss and keep you in the loop and find ways for you to get involved. Again, whether it's on a committee, whether it's on a task force, whether there's a community service project that you want to initiate or have APTA NJ support behind. Like, we are all about getting out in the community and trying to promote physical activity, promote physical health, promote physical therapy as a profession all around the state. And especially now that we're past COVID, that's something that's super important that we are definitely working to get behind, especially in the area of Trenton, where our new headquarters is for APTA New Jersey. So I know that's a lot of information. There's probably one more important thing I want to make sure to mention is, APTA membership is expensive. And I have identified with a value that I get out of my membership, and that's why I continue to be a member and I continue to serve, because I find it provides me more value even than what I pay into it. I would pay even more if they needed me to, because I find that I get that value out of it and I get that engagement out of it that really kind of fills my cup back up, and that serving the profession is something that gets me excited. And that's how I end up working my way through here to be the vice president and help lead this organization. But one of the other things that I don't think a lot of people know is a lot of the legislative wins that we have as APTA New Jersey, and dry needling being the highest profile example in recent history, is in order to advocate for our profession and in order to be in front of the legislators who are going to make decisions about the laws that get passed that dictate how we can practice and what we can do as a profession, that takes money. And that is 100% separate from the dues that you pay as an APTA New Jersey member. In New Jersey, we have, it's called the PT plan, which is basically our legislative action fund allows us to show up at the events and have representation at events with different legislators around the state. And that is, like I said, 100% separate from your dues that you pay, and you don't have to be a APTA New Jersey member to donate to that fund. So if you're in a financial situation or for whatever reason you decide membership is not right for you right now, you still can donate money to the PT plan, which will help support the legislative efforts in New Jersey moving forward and allow us to continue to build relationships with the legislators, allow us continue to build our reputation as an association, but also as a profession in New Jersey. There are more people that know who and what physical therapy is now in the State House down in Trenton because of the fight that we've had with dry needling. There are people that know, oh, hey, here come the physical therapists, and I want to check in with them about this other piece of legislation I have. Currently, there's a few bills that are going to come up soon, one around women's health and pelvic floor physical therapy in the postpartum period. There's another bill around geriatrics with falls prevention, and we are supporting those bills, and that's one part of what APTA NJ does, and the leadership of APTA NJ does, is to kind of look after the legislation that's going on and make sure we're putting our support behind the right things that will help drive our profession forward and to make our membership aware of it. Anybody who was paying attention to the dry needling stuff certainly knows there were lots of calls for action to put in emails and calls to your legislators to make sure we could get that thing across the finish line. So that's another way to be involved as well, is just keep an eye out for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, man. And for people who are practicing New Jersey, we have a lot. I mean, I'm so blessed to be in New Jersey compared to New York because I at one point I had license in New York as well. And the fact that we have direct access, I mean, we take that for granted, man. Like I have friends who own their practices in New York, and if they hire a new grad PT, it's gonna be tough. Like they gotta get to go script and all of that stuff. The fact we have direct access, I think to me is huge. And having dry needling has been vital for our practice because now the care that we can provide, the modality that we have is so much better than before. So I mean, obviously, I appreciate all of that when it comes to your job and the team at the APTA. So let's just go back to like the big corporate thing that we talked about before, especially, like obviously it comes to my awareness that's obvious. Big venture capitalists parking their money into big corporation, hoping to get return on investment, long term, because again, PT practices are pandemic proof, as you can see. Because of that, it's diluted our voices in the PT field, right? Because we don't own it. Like I own my clinic and I don't have any partners or anything, so I make decision under the scope of me as a PT for the patient and for my fellow physical therapists who are working for me. So I can make those kind of decisions, and sometimes those decisions are probably not the best for profit, right? The fact that I have a one-on-one model, I tell people all the time, like it's really hard. Like the guys at the big corporation, they have it right? If you want to follow the trail of money, you follow them. You don't follow me. You follow me for freedom. You follow me for the right thing. Do the best thing for the patient, for me, for my team. But if you want more money, you follow those guys. So how do we slowly create some sort of small change? I'm not asking for a big thing, right? I'm not asking for a hostile takeover. How do we, again, besides taking accountability on the decision that we make on a day-to-day basis that no one can take our power away, what else can we do? Do you think that we can create 10 years from now that we can say, you know what, we can probably gain some small market share back that the PT field now owns and run by PT more so than big corporation?
Yeah, and that's the question, right? I think there's a lot of different angles that we can take for it, right? Even just beyond the decisions you make on a day-to-day basis as an individual clinician, there's only so much change you can make on a day-to-day basis when you're treating your patients. But I think it does start there. It starts with clinicians that when you're in a situation that is not ideal, or you're feeling pressured to do things that you don't agree with, or ethically you're not in line with, or you feel like is not in the best interest of the patients that you care for, I think we have to speak up. I think you have to have those tough conversations with your higher ups. You have to have those when you have a staff meeting or you have a chance to talk to your higher ups, like voice those opinions and make sure that they're heard. I think too often as PTs, we tend to be agreeable. We want to make our patients happy, and we're in that business of compromising and kind of figuring out, maybe sacrificing a little bit of what we want to get the patient to do a little bit of what they need to do. And I think sometimes that bleeds over a little bit too much when we're advocating for ourselves as professionals, not in an APTA New Jersey sense of advocacy, but like in a advocating for your position as a clinician, and you're a doctor of physical therapy, right? Like you're a new grad coming out. I know we both have our doctorates. Like, you're a practicing clinician. You should have the autonomy to say, like, I'm not comfortable with the way this is going, and have to have those tough conversations. So I think on an individual level, beyond just treating each individual patient, I think that's an important thing that needs to happen more often. I also think it comes to supporting APTA New Jersey to advocate for us, because if reimbursement continues to go down, the problem of being overworked, 4+ patients an hour, no documentation time, having to do tons of documentation at night is only going to get worse. And so I think there's an important advocacy effort that has to happen there as well. I think also supporting APTA and APTA New Jersey and the resources that can be provided to businesses like yours, and having that awareness of what's going on a legislative front allows a small business to be able to stay ahead of what changes might be coming, or stay ahead and be aware of how the landscape might be changing. So I think there's value there as well to support the smaller businesses that can drive the free market to deliver better care. And the more we can get that out there, the more patients recognize where the good care is coming from, whether it's a big chain, whether it's a small mom and pop place, if it's a 5-location privately owned place. I think that we need to create an environment where better care is highlighted, better care is delivered and when better care is received, I think that that's what will ultimately turn the giant cruise ship slowly, but get us to a point where we need to drive outcomes, value, and in the light of what's best for the patient. And if we can do things as a profession, as each individual business, as APTA New Jersey, as clinicians in whatever structure we're in, whether that's corporate, privately owned, whatever, I think we just need to continue to drive value and drive outcomes for our patients and drive the relationships with our patients, because ultimately that's what will drive how the market changes over time. And I'm not an economist. There's all kinds of other layers and levels to everything, of course, and it's more complex and complicated than that. But I think if we can keep that focus on the patient and keep that focus on delivering the best outcome to the patient in front of us, in a way that makes the patient know they can come back and see us and want to come back and see us the next time they have a problem, I feel like that is what everything needs to drive us in that direction. If that makes sense.
And no, I totally agree, man. And maybe it's just me being super possibly naive, and I do think it's all start with care. Yeah. Because as PT, what can we do that we can take control over, right? It's our care that we can give to the patient. We can give exceptional care, and let's say the big corporation down the road does not give exceptional care. That's how we differentiate ourselves already. And now the more people understand, like, oh wow, like there's a better way. These guys down the road doing better. Like the way my business grew is through word of mouth. Like we run 0 ads. I didn't even have money to run it. I didn't know how to do it. We just started doing it this year, right? But it's all started with just doing the little things really well, which is delivering care. Then people start coming to us and they're like, oh wow, like I mean, they're doing things differently. And then they're like, oh, guess what? I'm willing to pay a little bit more for this because I'm getting better outcomes, right? I'm getting to go do the thing that I wanted to do faster, right? Let's face it, as PTs, I think one thing that I really had to learn was no one wants to come see me. There's so many other things they'd rather do, right? And, they'd rather be with their grandkids. They'd rather go out to brunch. They'd rather go play, whatever, squash and all of that stuff. The things that they want to do. Like, no one look forward to come see us. But if they're hurt, they would prefer to see us more than other places, right? And we start with that. We slowly build positive momentum by saying, like, all right, let's do good care. Let people talk about, hey, here's how PT actually do it. Here's what we do. Here's how we can help you. And we can take ownership on, like, oh, yeah, here's how we can treat ACL, right? Hey, we can do grade 5 manipulation, New Jersey. Now we can do dry needling, like all these things. Like one of the best courses I took was with spinal manipulation. And the guy was, his name is like Raymond's Butt, great guy. Yep. He was like, listen, we need to be the greatest hit of evidence-based practice. And I love that, right? Because, again, if we can do that, people will come to us. People come more to us. They will tell their friends, like, oh, there's a better way of PT. Come to these guys. If there's more of that coming around, next thing you know, the big corporation will be like, what the hell happened? Like, what happened to all these people, right? In the past, I have people who, like, reached out, like, hey, by the way, heard so-and-so, big company looking to look into your clinic, to buy it. I was like, no. I'm keeping this forever. Like, this is what I'm doing. It's a flagship for me. I tell my wife all the time, like, I hit the lotto, I'm still showing up every day just because this is something that I'm really, truly passionate about. And the reason I started this podcast, like I told you before, is so I can interview someone like you, other clinics owner. So when people are listening, like, you don't have to go do it yourself. There's other clinics right there. Yeah. Like my clinic, my friend's clinic. Go apply there. Help them be successful so you can be successful and the field can be successful.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about, It's driving those relationships. It's driving that ability to do things the way that you identify with and connected to your who and who you are as a individual, as a person, as a clinician, as a professional, as a business person, as a family member. All those roles that you fulfill in life is, what should like you just described, drives you to get up every day and feel like you won the lottery and coming in and doing your thing is like, find that. And that doesn't mean you have to create it. You can go somewhere where you have an opportunity to do that, like to work for somebody like you. Or I've been very lucky in the situation I'm in that it's been a great situation for me to this point. And find those opportunities that make you want to get up in the morning and deliver that great care that we were just talking about, so you can get those great outcomes, so we can drive this profession forward, so people can think of physical therapy as what we believe the potential of physical therapy can be. And I think that's what we'll get. It has to happen slow. It has to happen with the fundamentals. It has to happen with the basics, like we talked about before. The small things are the big things. Get those small things right, line them up, and work at it, and refine that craft, and continue to deliver the type of care that we no PT can provide. I think if we continue to do that, a lot of the big things will take care of themselves. As long as we stay engaged, as long as we advocate, as long as we are APTA members, as long as we support the PT plan, as long as we stand up and fight for this profession on that big scale, and we make sure we're taking care of that small scale on the day-to-day at home, I think we can continue to drive this thing in the right direction. I think we can continue to make positive change and help physical therapy reach its full potential.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. I think we should end on that note. Cool. I mean, it's a great way to end the podcast. Yeah. So I know you're not on Instagram, but where can people find you?
Yeah. LinkedIn right now is kind of where I'm engaging, so you can look me up there, Anthony Falco. I am on Instagram. I only check it though on my laptop, so I'm checking it like a couple times a week. A Falco DPT. You can find me on there. But yeah, I'm always happy to connect and chat and have these big conversations. I mean, we talked about a ton of stuff today, which is awesome. And any one of these topics we probably could break down and do it. 3 episodes
deep dive,
on it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I love it. I just want to say before we wrap up, thank you to you for putting this podcast together, man. I think we need to get more positive messages out about what this profession is and what we can do, because it's not all doom and gloom. There is so much good that we can do, and there's so much potential for this profession. I think something like this and having conversations like this, I hope it continues to spark ideas and some inspiration for people out there, and can help us continue to move this ship forward, because I really think with healthcare, we can be that key cog in the wheel that helps drive things. And so thank you to you for everything that you do, your success in your business and the type of care that you're providing. And thank you for having me on this podcast. It's been awesome. And I hope we can do it again sometime.
No, I appreciate it, man. We'll definitely have you back. I think there's more we can cover. And obviously my promise to you, I'll show up to some APTA meetings, make sure I'll be in the trenches with you. Let's see what's going on there. And then let's get you back on. Let's talk more. I think if we can do this maybe quarterly, you can give us a little bit update.
Sure.
I think that would be really good. It will help a lot of the PTs out that do not have the time or are not reading their emails because there's a lot of stuff. So Anthony, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.